Hey there, TaxBots. I'm Justin Spicer from Legal Aid of Southeast and Central Ohio, and I'm here with two attorneys from our tax team, Luke Meenick and Megan Sullivan. Today, we're going to be talking about how to understand if you're being audited. Feel free to leave a comment or a question, and we'll answer whatever we can. Luke, to get us started, when a taxpayer gets a letter from the IRS, does that mean they're being audited?
No. So the IRS sends all types of letters or notices. Letters are the main way the IRS communicates with people about their tax. And so while those letters from the IRS can be confusing or even scary, it is important to open the letter and read it carefully. You may miss out on important deadlines if you ignore the mail. If you do receive an IRS exam or audit notice, the IRS is normally asking you to prove certain credits or deductions that were claimed on your tax return, like the earned income tax credit or the child tax credit. An audit can be a long process, and the IRS has to follow a lot of steps before they're allowed to charge a taxpayer more tax or reduce a refund. Those steps are put into place to protect the taxpayer and to give them a fair chance to respond before the IRS acts.
It is possible, though, that the IRS will make a change to your return without going through that whole examination process that Luke described. The first example of this sped up process is called a math error notice. When the taxpayer makes a mistake on a return, like adding numbers wrong or not submitting the right form, the IRS changes the return and then sends the taxpayer a letter that tells them about the mistake that has already been fixed. There are other errors that the IRS treats as math errors as well, including removing a credit if you don't include the form required to claim it, or removing a stimulus payment claimed on the return if the IRS thinks they already paid it out.
So, Megan, will that notice be labeled math error notice?
No, unfortunately, the IRS doesn't make it that clear. The notice may say something like changes to your 2022 1040, comma, adjusted refund or amount due. There will also be a notice number in the top right-hand corner that will say CP11, CP12, CP13, or CP16.
So, Luke, what happens if the taxpayer disagrees with the math error notice that they got?
So if you disagree with the math error notice, the first thing you should do is read the notice carefully and try to understand what the IRS has changed on the tax return and why they made the change. You also want to make note of any response deadlines. Next, you should try to respond to the letter and explain why you think the changes made by the IRS to your tax return were wrong. You want to include copies of any documents that support your position. If possible, you should send the letter by certified mail within 60 days of the date of the IRS letter. Be sure to mail the response to the address on the letter. It's usually found in the upper right-hand corner. Keep a copy of what you mailed and proof of mailing from the post office. When the IRS gets your letter, they should undo the changes they made and start following the longer examination process we talked about earlier. This gives the taxpayer more rights to appeal the IRS or to appeal decisions the IRS makes about the tax return.
Megan, what if you missed that 60-day deadline? Is it too late?
Well, it's best to send the letter within 60 days because then you have more rights to challenge the IRS if you do. But if you miss that 60-day mark, you should still respond as soon as possible and provide all the information and documents that Luke talked about. It is really better late than never. After 60 days, the IRS does not have to undo their changes to the return, and you don't have the same protections from the IRS. And the IRS will also start trying to collect any money it believes you owe from the changes it made. You may want to also contact the collections department at the IRS at that point, but the IRS will still review those documents that you sent in.
Luke, can you give us another example of a notice a taxpayer might get that would automatically change their tax return?
Yeah, so another notice that they could receive is an automated underreporter notice. So this happens if the income that you listed on your tax return does not match the income that is reported to the IRS under your Social Security number. So each year in January, your employer is required to send you a Form W-2 that reports all of the money you earned the year before and the withholding that was done for your taxes that will be due. You may also get 1099 forms from other people or businesses that paid you money. The IRS also receives this information. If the IRS computer sees income that was reported to them that isn't listed on your tax return, they send you what's called a CP 2000 notice that describes the income the IRS thinks you should have included and tells you how much additional tax they think you owe. The taxpayer has 30 days to disagree with the IRS. If the taxpayer does not respond within 30 days, the IRS follows up by issuing a notice of deficiency. At that point, the taxpayer has 90 days to file a petition with the U.S. Tax Court.
That sounds pretty similar to the audit process. Megan, is that different from an audit?
Yes, by law, the IRS can only audit or examine a return one time. So taxpayers don't get bothered repeatedly. They're supposed to fix any exam issues all at once. The process for the underreporter and the math error notice aren't audits, so you could go through these processes and then also end up having an audit.
Luke, are there any other IRS functions that act like an exam?
So sometimes the IRS will also delay the processing of a tax return or issuing a refund if they need to verify a taxpayer identity or to verify the income that they claimed on the tax return. The IRS would generally send a notice requesting identity verification or proof of your income, but there can be a long wait between filing your tax return and receiving that notice.
Megan, is there anything a taxpayer can do to help speed that process up?
Not really. It's important to respond as quickly as possible to the notices that you do receive and provide all the required information. However, these types of issues that Luke was talking about require human intervention, so the process takes longer as a result. But if it's been 6 or 7 months since you filed your return and haven't received a refund or any notices from the IRS, you may want to call the IRS to see if they have a record of receiving your return or if they sent you a notice that somehow did not get to you.
Okay, great. Thanks for the awesome information. Thanks to everyone for listening. As a reminder, the video of this session and all the others in our tax chat series are available on our Facebook page and our YouTube channel. Join us in August when we continue our series on tax issues for people who are self-employed. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time.